Welcome everybody. My name is Christian Foust. I'm training director with the Empower Project. It's exciting to be here to talk about building real power with relational organizing. So thanks for joining us. If I could get the first slide. So if we were in the room together today, I'd ask you that you can't pick anyone in this room, but I'd ask you to think about who's the last person that you involved in your organizing. We don't want you to think about mutuals either. That's discouraged, but like that would be people that someone that you and someone else in the room knows. But we're not in the same room today. So I just want you to think about who the last person that you involved in your organizing was as we start this presentation. Next slide. The Empower Project, we're here to support your relational organizing through three ways. We provide training, program support, and ongoing support for free to all 501c3s, 501c4s around relational organizing, everything from training your volunteers all the way up to building your program. We also build an app called Empower that we believe helps track relational organizing and helps you be efficient and most efficient with your relational organizing work and make sure that you're able to follow up with your people. Also, when we can, we provide regrants to lift up programs. Next slide. So to start with, I'd like to posit that relational organizing is a methodology. It's an organizing that acknowledges the power within and importance of constituencies, existing connections. So we've talked about several different types of organizing. There's relational organizing, the idea being that you're organizing with your friends, people that you know, someone that you're in relation to. There's solidarity organizing, which is finding common cause over issues. So solidarity organizing, you might recognize as like labor organizing. Championing a person, like think of the Obama movement, like there's a figure at the head of it, so there's a champion that you organize around. And then there's also negative integration. Negative integration is where you're talking about more about what your opponents do and talking negatively about them and integrating their negatives into your messaging. So those are four different kinds of organizing. We see a lot of negative integration from the likes of Trump, etc. Next slide. The elements of relational organizing is that it prioritizes and builds upon existing connections. It centers your people, your own people's reach and influence, and emphasizes developing your people's capacity to communicate. So you're not only helping them reach out to their friends, but you're helping them communicate. And to do that, it's important to have your organizing fundamentals on lock so that you can share them. So let's start with training. Relational organizing is preparing and supporting people to bring the power within their existing relationships to affect change. So traditionally, when we see, this is like a version of the snowflake model from Obama, right? But there's a little more give and take. Like those arrows are reciprocal, right? Like when we reach out to those friends and family, we're learning things from them when we talk to them, right? And we're taking those things back to our directors and back to like the original organizing director so that they understand the communities that we're organizing. So the relational organizing is preparing and supporting people to work with their relationships so that they can better communicate with those people and also bring information back that's relevant to the organizing. So in order to do that, you need to put the organizing pieces back in the hands of volunteers. You need to think about how to train them around one-on-ones, how to uh, help them tell stories that will connect with others, help them understand asks, and more. So in order to do all of that, you need a system to keep all this organizing organized, right? If I often worked out of notebooks and Google Sheets, and sometimes I had multiple notebooks, sometimes I had multiple Google Sheets going. So it's important to have a system to keep all this organizing organized. And oftentimes it's easy to get, when you're in the thick of organizing, it's easy to get disorganized. Empower is a powerful tool for organizing that's here to help you manage your volunteers, manage your organizers, and manage your program in an efficient way so that you're building a strong relational network and you're building as much organizing as you are relying on the tool. This tool does not work if you don't organize around the tool. There's no silver bullet. Empower isn't a silver bullet. That's why we're going to talk about these principles of organizing. 3, it takes dedication to the method and your system. It's going to take time for volunteers to get used to talking to their friends and family. We're asking people to build relationships or have conversations about issues with people that they know that maybe they're uncomfortable about doing it, or they've never talked to some of their family members about issues that they cared about before. So they're going to need support. So sometimes it can take time. Sometimes you're in an organization where those things are already there. They're already talking to people in their communities about the things they care about. So dedication to the method and your system will really help you build that support that you're going to need on the ground from your relational organizers and their volunteers. So fundamentals, systems, and dedication are key to building relational organizing programs. It'd be really hard to cover all of that in the time allotted, so we've condensed some stuff. Let's talk about having your organizing fundamentals on lock. Next slide. That's why we've come up with this term peopleology. Next slide. Organizing is the process by whatever means of moving a group of people to create or resist change. But how do we keep track of those people, right? And how do we identify those people? Organizing creates power, right? It's the capacity to create change, and we need people in order to create change, right? So where is it that we find those people? It's in shared ideas, mass movements, right? These we often find those people with shared ideas that can build mass movements to build people power. And in order to do that, we need to understand the people in our lives and the relationships that we already have. So now we'd like you to think about who are your people. Next slide. So first, we'll talk about your constituency. Your organization's constituency is the people you are working for. They're the people that you believe have a shared interest in the goals of your organization. The constituency is the group of people that you identify as possible base members, right? So your organization's constituency is the group of people that you are working for. So if you're working for a conservation group, your constituency would be that you're supporting people who believe in conservation. So identifying your constituency means identifying those people in the community that support conservation, and that would be your constituency. And your constituency helps you identify your base. Your base is the folks who know about and interact with your organization. So, from your constituency, they were someone that cared about conservation. Perhaps they were invited to something by a friend. Somehow they found out about your organization and interacted with it in one way or another, right? So, they're an individual or small group that have heard of you. Maybe they follow your organization online, they share the vision, and maybe they even show up to the occasional event or meeting. And out of that base is where we find our volunteers. Someone who shows up to the occasional meeting isn't a volunteer until they actively engage in helping build in the program. So volunteers are people who are invested in the vision of your organization and are doing something about it. So they're taking an action, right? Not just coming to a meeting, but maybe they volunteered to sit at the sign up table at the start of the meeting, right? And make sure everybody gets signed up. Like, so it's someone from your base that took an action uh, that supports the vision of your organization. A leader is the next step beyond that volunteer that comes in and takes an action with your organization. A volunteer or a leader is very similar. Oh, sorry, leader is very similar to an organizer, right? A leader is tasked with building and managing relationships for an organization with individuals, groups, or other organization. So in relational organizing, when someone becomes a leader, they're now helping their friends and family uh, build and manage relationships for that organization as well. So now they're actually helping their friends connect, right? And in that process, your job as an organizer is to elevate people, is to find that those people in that constituency that can become your base, and then to like identify that base and identify within that base who can be their volunteer and who could eventually be a leader. So your job as an organizer is to help them elevate up that those scales and see where they're comfortable. Not every volunteer, not every base is a leader, not every volunteer is going to be a leader, right? So your constituency, you engage. Your base, you develop. Your volunteer, you mobilize, right? And your leader is organizing. So your volunteer is helping you mobilize the other people in your base to like turn out to an election, to turn out to an event, whatever it is that you're organizing around. So you're elevating people through that structure. So let's explore that some more. Think of one of your specific constituents or a few of them. It's someone that you're working for. You want to think about their motives and really spend some time talking it out. Like think through the specifics of that constituent, right? And talk it out. Like think through what you know about that constituent and what you can learn. Engaging looks like bringing people in, supporting those affected by your problems, and sharing and introducing your vision. So when you're engaging, you're at that level where you're addressing your constituency, you're bringing people in, You're supporting those affected by your problems by offering them an opportunity to come in and volunteer, and also they're sharing and introducing your vision, uh, and engaging them around that shared vision. Another important thing to do when you're thinking about your constituency is switch perspectives. Brainstorm ways your partner could engage that constituent, right? So you want to switch perspectives so that you're coming from the constituent perspective, and giving them the space to meet them where they are, uh, and have that perspective as you're doing that kind of organizing. Now think of a specific person in your base. So it's someone you're working on. Uh, you want to know that they rock with your vision, right? But how do you know that, right? You know that by engaging them in conversation, by sharing what's important to you and finding out if they reverberate those important things back to you, right? You're incorporating what they share with you into that vision. So, like, does their vision work with your vision? If it does, they're a part of your base. So once you've identified somebody in your base, what does development look like? It means educating and updating. It means regularly letting them know about things that your organization is doing and learning. It means updating them on the impact of the volunteering that they've done so that they feel like they've contributed to that organizational development. It means connecting. When you connect with someone, when you share a story with someone, rather than just contacting them and asking them 8 questions, when you connect with someone, they are taking things in from you and you're learning from one another. And that connection is a development, right? Developing someone means also like helping them connect with others. They learn how to connect with others when they connect with you. And then also encouraging, right? Encouraging people to get involved, encouraging people to take that next step in volunteering and becoming a leader, encouraging people to own their own work over their activism, right? Uh, and agitating, that's something I think, in particular with relational organizing, that's a little different than when we talk about agitation in organizing in general. In relational organizing, actually, like in organizing in general right now, I would posit that most everyone is agitated. We don't need to agitate them. We need to find out what aspect of the thing that we're working on agitates them and lean into that agitation, uh, so that we're helping because one of the reasons that you agitate people is to help de-escalate. So if they're already agitated, find what they're agitated about and use that energy as a development tool. Right. And again, like switch perspectives. Always think about the other perspective. Always think about from that base member, right? Is there something else that we could do to reach out and meet people where they are? Next slide. So once you're thinking of a specific volunteer, what does mobilizing that volunteer look like, right? Actually, could we go back to the last slide? Apologies. So thinking of a specific volunteer, think about someone you're working with. Do you have an idea that they're ready to do to make the vision a reality? Like, spend time with them. Talk to them about what they see as making that vision a reality, and do what you can to tie what they see as making it a reality into their work, right? If that means that they like drawing, let them draw signs for the upcoming protests. If it means that they like certain aspects of a thing, like let them contribute to that aspect of the vision, right? And always talk it out. Like, spend time talking to your volunteers. Spend time with them, figuring out what makes them feel included and also feel like they're contributing to the organization. And mobilizing looks like asks. It looks like asking your friends to do the next thing that seems logical for them to do. If they came to a meeting, right, maybe the next ask is for them to, like, great, you came to that meeting, that group, we're all going to go door knocking on Saturday. I know you've never door knocked before, but do you want to come with me on Saturday? So mobilizing looks like asks. It's taking that person, whether it's from the base, and introducing them to the next step, right? Hey, great. I know you care about our issues. Would you join us this Saturday, or would you follow us on Facebook? They follow you on Facebook. Maybe a week later, you thank them. You say, hey, that was great. We have a meeting come up. So you're just moving them through mobilization, right? And then switch perspectives again, right? Brainstorm ways that or another organization or other people could mobilize that volunteer so that you're constantly expanding that vision. So how do we do this? We relationally organize through 3 types of actions. We have interactions, like we have encounters, we have one-on-ones, we have meetings. That's right. It's similar to a ladder of engagement, Denise, but what we actually call it is an elevator of engagement, because as ladder of engagement, honestly, is actually not ADA compliant. So we use elevator of engagement because it's more accessible to more people. We think we're being clever. So with that, I want to, this was our introduction to building real power with relational organizing. I want to give a chance for anybody to drop any questions in the chat. But you can also reach out to us here at christian@empowerproject.us. This was designed as more interactive at Netroots, but please reach out if you have questions and would like to follow up with anything.
Hey, so I haven't seen any questions pop in the chat yet, but I do want to emphasize I love the elevator of engagement. That's fantastic. And if you don't mind if I actually pose a question just to kind of get your thoughts.
Oh yeah.
There are lots of interesting conversations, and I feel like in relational organizing, you often. All right, so I'm gonna take away all the suppositions. So, what do you think about like these concepts of like we talk a lot about those steps in relational organizing? Have you seen instances where you can make bigger asks of folks that are in your community than you would with that person who maybe just sort of came off the street? So instead of going floor to floor to floor, you can go from like the ground floor to floor 3 or 4, or do you still think it's a really good practice to just really gradually bring folks through those spaces?
I think if the person has a former relationship with the organization and you identify that that person could like has skills, right? I think it's very possible for you to jump that person up that elevator. If they're not terribly familiar with your organization and you're getting comfortable with that volunteer in that space, I think it's okay to like lock them up, and I like put them up the same elevator of engagement as everybody else. I think it's kind of relational in the same way that like we teach it, right? Is you're using relational in all the aspects. Like, great, like this person has a lot of skills. Here, why don't you do these first couples just so that you are familiar with what the rest of the volunteers are doing, right? So there's a couple different ways that you could approach it, but I actually think like if it's someone that you're familiar with that has kind of been around your organization, I think it's safer to jump. If it's somebody new to the issue, I think letting them understand how you work with volunteers is helpful.
Right on.
And then they're also learning through practice too, like you're modeling that behavior.
Yeah. I think it's always great to reinforce a lot of the work that goes on throughout the org and make sure there's that transparency.
Yeah.
I don't see anybody jumping in with questions. So I was about to say, hang on, I have multiple views as the host that I have to sometimes toggle between. Do you have anything else you want to add? See if maybe anybody jumps in with a question or two.
Like, is anyone here already utilizing relational organizing? Is there anything in this that like prompted you to think about your program differently, or anything that like you'd want to dig in on particular, or anything that you learned too if you're already running a program?
There's a few folks, but I think they're just being quiet,
I'm
which
used
is
to that.
cool too. We're still also in the workday for an awful lot of people.
We
So,
are. Yes.
but this is being recorded. And
Great.
just as a tiny sidebar, while we've brought this up, if you jumped in late or you're watching this later and you do have questions, drop them in the chat and we'll circle back to Christian. Or again, he's provided his email. You can send them directly, but we're going to be making sure we're checking in on these sessions and making sure like if there are questions or comments that we do circle them up. So don't be shy, even if it's a little bit after the fact.
Thank you.
Okay. So I know that you guys do a whole lot of trainings.
We do.
Do you have any that folks that are maybe just getting started with relational organizing or want to start in, implementing this with their organizations that are coming up that we can maybe drop some links into the chat and then I can post them also on the session site?
Yeah, actually, we have one-on-one active listening session and strong asks and train the trainer and elevator of engagement sessions that are on Fridays. That I think
Like every Friday?
would be, yeah, Fridays through the remainder of the calendar year. And then also we'll be adding a storytelling and connecting that's going to be on Thursdays. So here is the registration link for the one-on-one and active listening. And the link for the strong asks, I'm sharing in your private chat. So you have those links for those trainings now. Those will be on Thursdays. We also have Empower Basics that are on Tuesdays. You can find that on our calendar on our website as well. That kind of walks through relational organizing basics and etc. But the one-on-one storytelling and recruitment, I think, are really top-notch trainings for you to get keyed in on relational organizing and get you going.
For anyone that might be a little bit more advanced, do you think you could provide a few teaser tips for the storytelling, which I think is a really important part of all organizing, but has I think a secret sauce with relational organizing?
Yeah, the secret sauce with storytelling in relational organizing is thinking about like a story from the sense of a challenge choice, presenting a challenge that you faced, a choice that you had to make, right? And then the decision that you made, and laying out that just like, why are you here, right? Like, it's because this happened to me X time ago, and now I had to choose whether I cared about it or I didn't, and I decided that I cared about X issue, and therefore I'm in this room, right? As really a really basic example of that storytelling. But what it does is it allows you to share a moment of choice, and people connect over those moments of choice. Especially if it was a choice that like was a pivotal point in your life. You don't have to be totally vulnerable, but like when you present someone with a story about why you're doing a thing and the decision that you made, it encourages them to think about decisions, and it also creates a connection with them where they're like, hey, I could probably do that same thing.
Awesome. All right. I'm still apparently the only
That's a
person
sneak
dropping
peek.
anything in the chat. But do you have any so we'll wrap up, but if you want to share any like closing thoughts, you want to revisit any slides, we have time. So
Yeah, if you just want to go back to, let me see. The just the funnel, the constituency-based volunteer leader funnel. Because I think this is the most important thing to understand in relational organizing is that you're going to have people that are in your constituency, and all they're ever going to be is in your constituency, and they'll vote around your issues, and sometimes they'll show up to an event, and that's totally okay. You need that constituency, right? Some people are only ever going to follow you on Facebook. It's okay. Even some of the friends that you ask to like engage or volunteer, they're going to say no and just follow you on follow the org on Facebook, and that's okay. You might ask them 6 months later and they'll say yes, right? No is always an okay answer when you're organizing because you never know what's going on in somebody's life, right? So one of the biggest things that I remind people is that no is one of the best answers that you can get because it's concrete. Like they were just direct with you. Like they're going to give you a direct answer. So when you follow up with them again, they're going to tell you yes or no, right? So that like doing the asks, escalating those asks, don't be afraid of making that ask and getting a no. A no is okay. Like a no is a win because you made the ask. Anytime that you make a strong ask and you do it directly, like giving a specific time, a specific place, exactly why you're doing it, that's the best thing that you can do. Like, and when you make that hard ask, they're either going to say yes, no, maybe they'll think about it, but like the yes or no when you ask hard is much more likely, and you don't give them as much wiggle room. So when they say no, great, they're going to be a part of my base for a while. I'll make a note and I'll follow up with them 6 months from now and ask them to volunteer again, right? So that's one of the things that we can also help you with Empower is that Empower helps you track those relationships. Like I could go back to a base member and look at the notes from the last time I talked to them 6 months ago and go, okay, don't ask them to do that, right? Or maybe that ask didn't work and I'll frame it another way this time. So, because the thing about relational organizing is you're the best messenger. You know that person, right? So you probably know what makes them mad, what motivates them, like to some extent better than anybody, like better than an organizer at the door does, or even another volunteer at the door. Because even if you don't know them totally, you know how to read them somewhat. So like there's friends of mine that I push hard, right? I cuss at them, I poke them, right? Because that's the relationship that we have. I know that I can do that, right? Um, I do not. There's other friends that I cannot do that with, and when I do it, it's me just being mad and pushy, right? So, like, you know your friends, you know it takes in your relationship for them to do stuff, and if that means like giving a hard time sometimes, like that's what that's how things work in your relationship. So you do that, but like you know these people, so relational organizing is really more about the volunteer and acknowledging where volunteers are than other types of organizing.
that's such a good reminder whether, it's relational or just like, you're kind of cold doing field work, like don't take it personally, right? You never know what's going on in someone's mind. And we care so much about the work that we're doing that it can sometimes be tough to not
Yeah.
take a reject. Like it feels like a personal rejection, right? It feels like a rejection, but it could just be like, hey man, I can't do that week. And they may not explain to you, but like, it's my niece's birthday, whatever it might be,
Hmm.
right? But if you do take it personally, it can kind of cause some ripples. I also love that most of the stuff is so applicable to like online or like offline, whether it's digital, etc. Field like organizing methodologies. So
To me, the strength of this is actually taking this from online to off, like taking relationships online. Like online is a great place to identify that you have shared common goals. Online is not a great place to organize. Like you don't do your organizing on your Facebook post. To me, your organizing, like your Facebook post might be about a thing that you care about. And then when people like your Facebook post, you message them and invite them, right? Like you don't put it on the comment, you don't put it on the post because when they comment on the post, they're thinking about other people. Other people can see it. Like when you directly message them, that's you asking them to do a thing as a friend. It's not you putting out a post that you're putting out to 800 people that you know. It's you saying, "Hey, I saw that you liked this post. Do you care about this? Would you come with me on Saturday?" Right? So
and
to me,
again,
relational
you're
is
real specific in that ask. It's
right.
not,
Like
hey, do you care? Do you want to do things with me?
it's on Saturday at this time, right? Because even your friends, if you're like, do you want to do it sometimes? Like sometime they're like, yeah, sure. And then when's the yeah, sure happen? And usually if you follow up with the date after the yeah, sure, it's more of a maybe.
Yeah, you get
Uh,
stuck in the internal maybe pool.
yep. And no one
Yep.
likes being stuck in the internal maybe pool.
Mm-mm. Nope, it's not a fun place to be.
I'd
Not
rather
gonna
be yes or no.
Yeah,
Thank
because
you.
then you can move on, and you're not gonna expend that
Yes,
energy that's limited, right, to go back and constantly follow up with somebody who just doesn't wanna say no, so,
exactly.
but yeah, I can talk about, like, organizing and training all day, but
Me too.
I want to be mindful, respectful of your time. And again, for folks, this is being recorded. Um, Christian, you want to give any like closing thoughts? And then we'll make sure again that these links are posted in the actual session in the app so that folks can come back and find them later. And I can put any other materials you like in there for you. But any closing comments, questions, thoughts, feedback?
I think the closing comments is that relational organizing is something that you're probably already doing in your own organizing. Relational organizing isn't anything new. It's something that someone slapped a shiny title onto the community organizing that I learned how to do in the 90s. Like that someone all of a sudden decided, like, oh, this is relational organizing. And also that there's been communities doing relational organizing for hundreds of years. We just didn't call it that. So I just want to acknowledge that, like, organizing and relational organizing is being humans in community together, that we know how to do naturally. So relational organizing is something that we just do, and we just need to learn how to do it better.